Welcome to the Andy Noise Experience podcast, Endurance Noise, Random Musings. It is 3 o'clock here in Bakersfield, California on September 30th, Hump Day 2020. Wow, September is finally over, thankfully. Looking forward to this upcoming weekend because we're going to have some more running action. Not only is Camille Herron going for the 48-hour world records out there in New Jersey, but we have the London Marathon, much like the Japanese one. The Tokyo Marathon, they didn't have the public running. They just had an elite race, and it was a fast one. I remember watching on NBC Gold, and man, there were so many great times run there. This one is going to be on a short 19-lap course. And, of course, the big news is that Bekele and Kipchoge are going to be going head-to-head. And last fall, Bekele in Berlin, who right after he's won 21 world titles and broke 6 track records, ran the marathon we've always been expecting him to run. He ran 2:01:41 and was just 2 seconds behind Kipchoge, who ran that time 2:01:39 the year before in Berlin. And of course, Kipchoge has been the Olympic marathon champ, and he's won 10 consecutive majors. And Kipchoge then later on, 2 weeks after Bekele ran that phenomenal time, finally broke sub 2 hour in the race in Vienna. So of course that race, he had pacers, and it was on a pancake flat course, but it was a loop course, kind of like what this London one is. And so there's an interesting article. This article was in Podium Runner, and they're talking to the guy who's actually the manager of both athletes. Pretty amazing. These two greats have been competing against each other since the early 2000s. Bekele has, of course, been on top on track and in cross country, and Kipchoge has become the marathon king. And it's interesting. Jos Hermans, founder and CEO of the Dutch Global Sports Communications, has been the manager of both guys for quite some time, which is interesting considering one's Kenyan, one's Ethiopian. And so Hermans, they were talking to him in this interview with him, they said, so how long have they known about the race? And, they said, well, they've been planning the London race, and both athletes have been gearing towards it. Training hasn't been perfect. Not as usual. For a long time, there was not a lot of training groups, no staying together, so it's not ideal preparation for both of them, but they have been training. He said last year, Podium Runner says, last year you told us how Bekele came to the Netherlands to train before Berlin and had the help of PT and nutritionists as well as coaching. And they said, yes, that was definitely true. And of course, this year, Ethiopia has been having some political strife. And so it's been quite difficult to train. And the athletes were allowed to leave Ethiopia, and they were allowed to leave the house. And so he said Bekele's been doing a lot of indoor training, treadmill training, alternate training, especially for this long time. And what was really interesting in this article is he says that Bekele is a really good treadmill runner, that he seems to like running on the treadmill. And that's interesting. You almost never hear of elites really doing treadmill runs. So that would be interesting. Be kind of cool. They should put them, have a Swift challenge and set it up kind of like how they had the Tour de France on Swift. Be kind of cool to have a world-class race on Swift, though on cycling it's, I think, a little easier to get the actual data going a little bit better. And of course then they asked, is it fair to say we shouldn't expect 2 hours? And of course the manager said, both guys are great shape. They've been training for years, and you never know what will happen on any given day. But going sub 2 hours, that's taking a minute 39 off of the current world record. And you do the quick math, that's 3 seconds a mile, and 3 seconds a mile is quite a bit. I know it sounds crazy, but when I was coaching high school cross country, a lot of times we would only expect this seniors, we wouldn't tell them this, but if they could take 15 seconds off their 5K time, that was phenomenal. And so that's 5 seconds a mile. So the 2K loop, St. James, and there's going to be some Europeans and British guys. He thinks there'll be 2 groups. There'll be a 2:10 group, which will be big, and then there'll be guys in the front, about 10 athletes. And it's amazing. They're talking about, Podium Runner says that these two have been racing against each other since 2001, 2002. Of course, Bekele, like I said, has always been taking the track championships in the cross country. And the manager says, Eliud has always been a very good coach, very good athlete, but the marathon distance is obviously a distance. His big skill is his discipline. He's very disciplined in his training, his preparation, and everything. And, that's definitely the case. He's always, be boring, not epic kind of guy. Kenese has a lot more talent probably, but for training for the marathon, you need lots of discipline. And the manager says that, that Kenenisa Bekele has just never been as disciplined. And the thing about it is, like with track and cross country, you can kind of get a quick build up and do quite well. And he's so amazingly talented that he's just been able to crush it. And I think the manager says that one of the things that really happened with Bekele was when they got rid of the cross country championships every year back in 2008. That didn't give him he didn't have really a reason to train year round. It's phenomenal that somebody as amazingly gifted as him, actually doesn't train year round, but he, like enjoys life, I guess. And so he started taking time off in the winter, and then he'd come back, and every track season he'd be getting fitter and fitter, later. And so he's been having difficulties with that. And I guess it got to a certain point where the manager actually had a run-in with him and almost dropped him as an athlete. But he says now Bekele's finally got it together. And the manager says that, these two have been racing against each other for 17, almost 20 years. They're 18, 19-year-old juniors, and it's pretty exciting. Bekele is 38, Kipchoge is 35. They ask him, how long do you think they could keep going? And he thinks, they could race till they're 40. And you look at our American team, we have Abdi came in third, and he's in his 40s. And especially with the marathon, it's all about, like I said, the years of training and the discipline. And so they said Haile Gebrselassie could have probably went on a few more years than he did. So you never know. Should be interesting. And so then if you go on to Let's Run, they had a great preview. Of course, the race, it says the world's greatest marathon is Sunday at the London Marathon. This is a men's preview. I'm not sure if it'll be the greatest race, but it should be good. Like I said, that Tokyo race was phenomenal. Even though there wasn't really anybody with names, the times were phenomenal. Of course, then it comes down to the shoes. And of course, with the shoes, both athletes are going to be wearing the Nike speed shoes. They've made a brand new shoe for Kipchoge with Kenyan colors, so that should be pretty cool. And this preview talks about how, we lost Boston, Berlin, Chicago, New York, but London has found a way to survive. And two men with the fastest times ever are going to be up there going against each other in the secure biosphere. It's kind of Americans, we call it the bubble. And the race is in October instead of April, and we'll finish in the mall in front of Buckingham Palace, but the rest of the course has changed dramatically. It's now 19.6 laps of a 1.3 loop around the park. The mass race has been eliminated along with spectators. It's elites only. And it was kind of interesting. They had a little discussion about, is this course going to be fast or slower than the Ineos course? And the Ineos course did have, it was a big loop with a U-turn at both ends. And this course has more turns. But then they said, the London course has often got lots of turns and has some hills. Of course, Berlin's pretty pancake flat, but it has some hills too. Unfortunately, the race is going to be at 5:15 Eastern time, which would be 2 in the morning here in California. But who knows? Maybe I'll try and wake up. I got to find out what it's going to be on. I imagine it's going to be on the NBC Sports package. And so it says here that Kipchoge and Bekele back in 2003 in the Worlds in Paris both won. Kipchoge won the 5, Bekele won the 10. 17 years later, they're still in top. It's pretty crazy. In fact, they're saying that when they won their world title 17 years ago, the marathon world record was 2:05:38, almost 4 minutes slower. Since then, 88 men have bettered that time, and the world record has dropped by almost 4 minutes, as we just said. So should be pretty cool. Of course, like they talk about, and Let's Run loves to talk about the shoes. And of course, the Nike Vaporflies, both men will be wearing them. And it says the 5 fastest marathons in history have all been run since September 2018, all in some form of the Nike Vaporflies. And of course, even the women's record was broke last year. And sorry, that's still a smoke in the air here in Bakersfield, even though I'm in the house. Bridget Kosgei, I think her last name is Kosgei. Bridget ran 2:14. Of course, she was wearing those Vaporflies too. And they kind of talk about here. I was talking about in March, Tokyo Marathon. One Japanese guy came in 28th place and ran 2:09:50. 15 men from Japan alone ran under 2:09, which is 4 more than have done it in the history of the U.S. Wow. We've only had 5 men break 2:09. And as recently as 2015, only 2 men broke 2:05 the entire year. So in Tokyo, 3 men went under that mark, and no one's batted an eye because the same thing in London in 2019. World Athletics has changed the shoe regulations, but they haven't rolled them back. And interestingly, you can't wear the shoes on the track. Mo Farah probably would have wished he could have when he just recently broke the world hour record. And so it says the truth is that in this race, Kipchoge, Bekele, you got to kind of put your money on Kipchoge because he's super consistent. They've raced 4 times, and Bekele has never come within 90 seconds of his rival. Bekele's run 11 marathons, 4 DNFs, and he's had 2 good races where he ran 2:03 and 2:01. But for the most part, he's pretty inconsistent. So basically, Bekele's got to be at his best. Kipchoge's got to have a bad day, and Kipchoge just doesn't have bad days. He's run 14 marathons in his life, and every single one of them is a strong performance. He's won 13 of them. The only time he's ever lost was when Wilson Kipsang ran a world record to beat him. Of course, Kipsang is now suspended for doping violations. And he's run 2:05, faster than all of them, except for when he ran his first one, 2:05:30, and then, of course, the Olympics, 2:08:44. But the Olympics are never fast. So they're talking about how the COVID-19 should affect them, and they said, well, because they can't travel. And then the biggest problem is, if you've ever on YouTube and seen Kipchoge, he has his training camp, which he really enjoys at Kipchoge, where it's like a dorm-style life. So unfortunately, he hasn't got to train with his people, but he's been doing a similar training. For some reason, someone is just banging on crap in the background here. So it says that, here's the thing. It says, Bekele's training has been a little bit more different, difficult because of Ethiopia's having all kinds of political unrest. But it's here it says that Bekele is a great treadmill runner, and so it's pretty interesting. So it's, could something happen with Bekele? Yeah, you never know. He's pretty amazing, but Kipchoge is the greatest marathoner in history, and Bekele is the most talented marathoner. So Bekele has at times with motivation since switching to marathon and cycled through a number of coaches, advisors in search of training advice, and has battled a series of injuries. So we should see. It should be interesting. It's kind of funny that this article says that they had to get all the way to this end, like 1,500 words before they even mention other people running. And there's a 2:02 guy and 2:03 guys. But basically, the only way they're going to win is if Kipchoge just has an off day. So it should be pretty exciting in the race. It's mostly Ethiopians and Kenyans who got the fast times. There is a Canadian, Cam Levins, but his PR is only 2:09:25. And then, of course, the 2016 Olympian Jared Ward is the only American man in the race. So who knows? It should be fun to see. And I will definitely be reporting on what ends up happening. So, as always, stay healthy, be boring, not epic.